Did they call you and say, hey, you know what, we changed our mind?
No, that never happened.
That never happened?
That never
Is
happened.
it too late now?
No, it's a little late.
It's too late.
Did you ever wonder what really happened with Lionel Richie and the Commodores? At 75, Lionel Richie is finally addressing some shocking rumors about his time with the legendary band.
Right. It was very painful. I've been through this with the guys when one guy gets a hit record and no one else gets the hit record.
Were things behind the scenes as perfect as they seemed? What caused tensions within the group? And how does Lionel feel about it now? Let's uncover the truth about the drama surrounding the Commodores.
Mint tea. Well, we grew mint in the backyard. So my mother would always say, go down in the backyard and pick me a couple of those little loaves of leaves of mint. Bring them up and I'll put it in iced tea.
Born on June 20th, 1949 in Tuskegee, Alabama. His parents were Lionel Brockman Richie, who worked as a U.S. Army systems analyst, and Alberta R. Foster, a teacher and school principal. Lionel's grandmother, Adelaide Mary Brown, was a skilled pianist who loved classical music. This musical talent seems to run in the family. He went to high school in Joliet, Illinois, where he's shown as a tennis player. He earned a scholarship to attend Tuskegee Institute, where he joined the marching band and graduated with a degree in economics and accounting.
I was born and raised on a university campus, on Tuskegee University campus, so it was Black history every day. I'm living amongst some of those people that we are celebrating. And
at one point, Lionel considered becoming a priest in the Episcopal Church, but he eventually decided to focus on music instead. Even though he couldn't read or write music, his talent was undeniable. Lionel also became a member of the Kappa Kappa Psi and Alpha Phi Alpha fraternities, both of which he actively supports. While at Tuskegee, Lionel formed several R and B groups. In 1968, he joined the Commodores as a singer and saxophonist. They signed their first record deal with Atlantic Records and later moved to Motown Records, where they opened for the Jackson 5. The Commodores quickly became a hit, blending funky dance tracks like Machine Gun and Brick House with slower ballads like Easy and Sail On.
That's why I'm easy.
Lionel's songwriting talent shone through early in his career. In 1974, he co-wrote the song Happy People, which became a hit for the Temptations. By the late 1970s, Lionel started writing songs for other artists. One of his biggest hits, Lady, was written for Kenny Rogers and became a chart-topping success in 1980.
Lady, for so many years I fought.
He also produced Kenny's album, Share Your Love. The two became lifelong friends. The Commodores were a popular band in the 1970s. Their songs made people dance and sing along, but things got tricky when Lionel Richie started getting more attention than the rest of the group. It all began when the band released hits that fans loved, but people focused more on Lionel. This made some band members feel left out. In 1977, they released a funky hit called Brick House. It became a huge success, but Lionel started writing softer, romantic songs after that. One of his songs became the group's first #1 hit in 1978. Fans loved Lionel's sweet and emotional style, and soon he became the star everyone talked about. At the same time, Lionel began writing songs for other artists. He wrote the hit Lady for Kenny Rogers and the beautiful duet Endless Love for Diana Ross.
My endless love.
These songs were massive hits and made Lionel even more famous. People started seeing him as a solo artist instead of just a member of the Commodores. This focus on Lionel caused problems in the band. Reporters praised Lionel more than the rest of the group. Some even said he didn't belong in a funk band, which hurt Lionel and the other members. The group's bond began to break. The Commodores eventually suggested Lionel make a solo album. He agreed, but one album turned into many. As Lionel's solo career took off, he moved further away from the band. This left the other members frustrated.
It was very painful. I've been through this with the guys. When one guy gets a hit record and no one else gets the hit record,
Right.
I know what that feels like. And the press kept saying terrible things like, what's a guy like Lionel Richie doing in a band like the Commodores?
William King, an original member, spoke about the split in 1985. He wasn't just upset about Lionel leaving. What hurt most was how Lionel kept promising to come back but never did. Each time Lionel worked on a new project, the group was left waiting. Promoters didn't want to book the Commodores without Lionel, making it hard for the band to tour or create new music.
Hard.
And it's very difficult. So we didn't really think of it as being this long. It's just going to be a break for a minute to kind of get everybody's attitude down a little bit. It's just that right after that, All Night Long happened.
King used a strong example to explain just how big a deal it was. He asked, would they book the Beatles without Paul McCartney? To the Commodores, Richie was their McCartney, a crucial part of their sound and appeal. But instead of making a clean break or telling the band directly that he wasn't coming back, Richie kept them in limbo. Lionel Richie recently shared his feelings about leaving the Commodores in a video called The Stab in the Heart. His story is full of emotion and honesty. He explained that leaving the group wasn't something he really wanted to do. In fact, he thought he would eventually go back to the Commodores. He didn't mean to hurt the group or his fans.
All night long, all night, all night.
Milan Williams had a terrifying experience before leaving the group. One day, while flying a small single-engine plane, something went terribly wrong. The plane began to have mechanical problems and Milan had to think quickly. He chose to make an emergency landing on a busy freeway in Phoenix, Arizona. It was an extremely dangerous situation. Thankfully, Milan and the band's press agent got out safely. The plane caught fire and was completely destroyed, but both men walked away unharmed. It could have been much worse, but their quick thinking saved their lives. After this life-changing event, Milan made another big decision. He left the Commodores. This wasn't just about the band, it was about his principles. Milan refused to perform in South Africa during apartheid, a time when black and white people were unfairly separated and treated differently. He believed apartheid was wrong and stood firm in his decision. However, this caused tension in the band. His departure marked the end of the Commodores' original lineup, the group that had brought them so much success and fame. Without Milan, the Commodores' music began to change. They moved away from the funky, soulful sound that had made them famous. This period was challenging as the band tried to find a new direction while dealing with the loss of an important member. Sadly, Milan faced more struggles after leaving the band. He was diagnosed with leukemia, a type of cancer, and fought bravely against it for 2 years. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2006. His death was a great loss for the music world, the Commodores, and their fans. Milan was more than a gifted musician. He was a man of courage, values, and heart. The Commodores also faced other changes. Ronald LaPred, the bassist, left the band and moved to New Zealand. Losing key members like Milan and Ronald made it harder for the group to keep their original magic. Still, the Commodores kept going, and Milan's legacy remains an unforgettable part of their story.
I realize that you're the one, and you're telling me it's time to say goodbye.
Let's talk about Lionel Richie's personal life, especially his first marriage to Brenda Harvey. Brenda met Lionel when they were both in college. They started dating while Lionel was touring with his band, the Commodores. They got married a year after Brenda graduated, on October 18, 1975. Even though they didn't always agree on everything, they both agreed on one thing: their daughter. Sadly, their love story didn't last forever. After 18 years together, Lionel filed for divorce in 1988. The reason? A huge fight between Lionel, Brenda, and his mistress. Things got really messy. Brenda found Lionel with Diane Alexander, a family friend, in the early morning hours of June 29, 1988. She didn't take it well. Brenda kicked Lionel and even hit Diane. Neighbors reported hearing a lot of shouting and the sound of breaking glass. Police had to come because it got so loud. Brenda was arrested and charged with several things, including battery and vandalism. One neighbor said Brenda had to be pushed to the ground to be handcuffed while she screamed for Diane to help her. It was a crazy scene, and Brenda was not happy about it. Lionel later admitted that his first marriage ended because of his own mistakes. He said, "The best thing was I fell in love. The worst thing was I was still married. That love was for Diane, who would later become his second wife."
We call it, you call it, I call it love.
Things between Brenda and Diane didn't calm down easily. Lionel remembered a lot of shouting and arguing between the two women. It was a time that embarrassed him deeply. In the end, Lionel admitted that it was his fault. He said, "When you're young and foolish, you make decisions you think are right at the moment, but they end up hurting people." Lionel and Alexander are rumored to have met at the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles, where they both performed. She appeared in the video of his smash hit, "Dancing on the Ceiling." The couple welcomed their son Miles on May 27, 1994, and married the following year. Lionel's second marriage to Diane also ended in divorce. He explained that he had promised to stay away from work after his first divorce. He wanted a simpler life with Diane, but one day he wandered back into the recording studio and everything changed. "I knew I was in trouble when I started making music again," Lionel admitted. His passion for music is a part of who he is, but it came at a cost in his personal life. When asked if he would have stayed with Brenda and avoided the pain of divorce, Lionel said, "If I could control it, yes. But when you're young, foolish, and a hopeless romantic, it's hard to make the right choices."
Feel if you really care.
Lionel Richie has always been known for his charm and talent, especially when it comes to women. When asked about how he handled all the attention, he joked about his younger days. He said, "When you're 19, the answer is, see me after the show." But now, at 60, he laughs and says, "You just smile and say, 'How are you?'" It's clear that Lionel's charm hasn't faded with age, but when asked how many women admired him over the years, he cleverly avoided giving a number. Instead, he joked, saying, "I'm a choir boy who just tries to help as many women as I can." He always uses humor to deal with the pressure of fame, but we can tell that it hasn't always been easy for him. Unlike many other famous people, Lionel Richie never got caught up in drugs. He even shared a funny story about spending an evening with reggae legend Bob Marley. Bob invited him to a room filled with smoke. At first, Lionel thought it was just normal smoke, but soon realized it was very different from the cigarettes he was used to. He quickly understood that drugs weren't for him. He said, "I need to be in control at all times, and I couldn't perform if I wasn't." Staying away from drugs helped Lionel stay focused on his music and career.
And I give my dad the credit. My biggest hero is my father.
In 1990, Lionel Richie experienced a deep personal loss when his father, Lionel Richie Sr., passed away at the age of 75. His father had always been his hero, so losing him hit Lionel very hard. He described this time as a massive depression that lasted for 4 years. In an interview with Lorraine Kelly in 2018, Lionel opened up about the pain of losing his father. He said, "My father was ill and I went through I won't say a depression, a massive depression, because, my dad was my hero." It was clear that his father's passing had a huge effect on him. During this tough time, Lionel felt lost and unsure of himself. He struggled to deal with the grief, and it wasn't until the birth of his second child, Miles, that things started to get better for him. Having his son, along with his daughter, Nicole Richie, made him realize that he had a family who looked up to him. Lionel explained, It was something about the birth of my kid. I realized I had a group of people that were kind of looking up to me to be the head of the house.
I didn't realize what he was going through. And he didn't make any effort to tell us what they were going through as black men and women in America.
This was also the time when Lionel realized it was time to get back to his music career. He had taken a break since 1986, but his children didn't really understand what he did for a living. So he decided to go back to making music to show his kids what he was passionate about. He thought, let's go back and prove to the kids what I do. Even though Lionel's father had lived a full life and passed away peacefully, the pain of losing him stayed with Lionel for years. But in the end, his family helped him heal, and he got back to doing what he loved. Lionel Richie's story shows us how life's challenges can shape us and how family and passion can help us get back on track. Like many famous bands, the Commodores faced big financial and legal problems over the years. These problems mainly involved their band's name and how money from their music was shared. As time passed, the original members of the band went in different directions, and it became harder for them to get back together without tension.
Stuck on you. I've been a fool too long. I guess it's time for me to come on home.
The trouble started in 2013 when Thomas McClary, a former member of the Commodores, began using the name the Commodores for his own band. Meanwhile, William King and Walter Orange, two other original members, continued to perform under the name the Commodores with new musicians. This caused confusion among fans, leading to a need for legal action. Things got even more complicated when McClary's use of the name led to a long legal battle. In 2018, a Florida court made a ruling that sided with the members still performing as the Commodores. The court said that only they could use the band's name through a company they had created. There were two key reasons behind this decision. First, the court found that the members who were still performing as the Commodores had common law trademark rights to the name. This meant they were the ones legally allowed to use it because they were the active group. Second, the court looked at agreements the band made over the years. These agreements showed that the name was shared, but no single member could use it on their own if they left the band. The Commodore's style later on began to change. In the 1980s, the band moved towards a more pop and commercial sound. In 1984, they added James Dean J.D. Nicholas as a co-lead singer alongside Walter Clyde Orange, the drummer. Despite these changes, the band didn't have big hits for a while. However, in 1985, things started to turn around. They released their final album with Motown Records, Night Shift. The album included the song Night Shift, which was a tribute to two famous singers, Marvin Gaye and Jackie Wilson, who had passed away the year before.
I know you're not alone. The night shift.
The song became a huge hit, reaching number 1, 3 in the US charts, and even won them a Grammy for Best R&B Performance by a duo or group with vocals. Despite their success, the shift in style made some fans unhappy. Many people missed the old funky sound and didn't know if they liked the new pop style. The change wasn't just about the band wanting to try something new. The music industry was changing too. In the 80s and 90s, new technology changed how people listened to music, especially with digital music. Record labels wanted bands like the Commodores to reach more people and sell more records. This meant the band had to change their music to fit what was popular at the time. This change wasn't easy for the Commodores. They had to figure out how to keep their old fans while also attracting new ones. It was tough to stay relevant in a fast-changing industry. Some old fans felt left out, while new listeners were curious about the new sound.
Interesting. So you would like to get the Commodores together again?
Oh, gosh, yes.
So
For
why
30
not?
years, I've been trying to
So
do
come on
this.
then.
The Commodores lost one of their key members, He made a huge difference in their success. At first, the band thought they would be okay without him. After all, they had been making music together for years. Many people believed that their sound came from all the members working together, and Richie was just one part of that. But soon, the group realized something important. Richie was seen as the main star. The public thought he was the one who wrote, produced, and arranged all of their biggest hits. Even though Richie had written many of the band's songs, the other members also played a huge role in making the music what it was. But when Richie left, they discovered that a lot of their fans were only interested in the Commodores if Richie was part of the group. This change affected the band badly, both in terms of popularity and money. They were no longer the big deal they once were.
That's why I'm easy.
Thomas McClary, another member of the band, shared his thoughts on the problems inside the group. He talked about how jealousy can be a dangerous feeling. He praised Lionel Richie's talent, saying, "Lionel is very talented. He has a great voice and is a wonderful writer." McClary also said that even if some of the band members didn't want to admit Richie's talent, it didn't change the fact that he was very good at what he did. McClary also spoke about William King, a member of the band who people often think caused some of the problems. McClary said, "William is probably the least talented one of us all, and he has been the main stumbling block." He also believed that Walter Orange, another band member, listened too much to King, which made things worse. When McClary was asked if he would like to see a reunion of the Commodores, he didn't hesitate to say, "Yes, I would love it." He explained that he had been trying to bring the band back together for nearly 30 years. He even recalled a special moment from 2008 when Lionel Richie invited him and Ronald LaPred to perform together in New Zealand. The fans loved seeing them on stage again.
Yes. In fact, Lionel Richie and Ronald LaPred and I actually performed in New Zealand recently, and we performed in New Orleans, and 65,000 people showed up. So there's an appetite for the reunion, obviously.
McClary also mentioned that in 2009, Lionel Richie wanted them to perform at the Essence Music Festival in New Orleans. They tried to get the other members of the band to join them, but the bad feelings were too strong. Some band members hadn't spoken to Lionel in over 40 years. McClary felt frustrated, saying, "Come on, you've forgotten what you're mad about." He clearly hopes that one day the group will come together again. The Commodores also faced challenges with their management. They didn't always agree with how their managers handled things. The managers made big decisions about their music, tours, and money. But the band wanted more control over these things because they felt it was their creativity that made their music special. This caused tension between the band and their managers. Another big problem was racial discrimination. The Commodores were an African-American band during a time when racism was still very common. They faced unfair treatment, especially when they were on tour. Sometimes they didn't get the same chances as white bands, even though they were just as talented. This made it harder for them to promote their music and reach new audiences. Losing Richie, dealing with band conflicts, and facing discrimination were tough challenges for the Commodores. But despite all of this, they still made their mark on music history.